Imagine stepping into the cage knowing that, more often than not, your toughest opponent isn't the man standing across from you, but the rulebook itself. Disqualifications in MMA are so scarce, they might as well be unicorn sightings. UFC averages just 1 DQ per year over the last 25 years, and one of the first major promotions went 8 years with only a single disqualification. Yet when fouls do happen, they explode across social feeds, rewrite fight histories, and remind everyone how thin the line is between victory and infamy. Hold on tight, because these stories will make you question every rule you thought you understood. From its earliest days, MMA promoters have fought tooth and nail to prove their sport is legitimate, so disqualifications have always been a last resort. In the UFC's modern era, since Zuffa bought the promotion in late 2000, there's averaged a shocking 1 DQ per year, despite hundreds of fights annually. Before that, under the original SEGA/SEGA ownership SCG, one lone disqualification marred 8 years of events. Even Pride FC, famous for its brutal spectacle, saw incredibly few DQs over a decade. When a fight ends in a DQ, it's not because someone slipped once. It almost always involves something so blatant or bizarre that officials have no choice. That rarity is exactly what makes each case unforgettable. But don't let the low numbers fool you. Every organization, from Pancrase to One Championship, has its own quirky rulebook. And when those rules change, even for a brief window, fighters get caught unaware, turning a routine bout into the wildest highlight reel you'll ever see. You'd think canine teeth belong to dogs, not fighters, yet biting has cost more than one contender their careers. Take Andre Lima versus Igor Svirino, a competitive back and forth until Lima allegedly sunk his teeth into Svirino's arm mid-round. The angles were ambiguous at first, but instant replay revealed flesh ripped open in a grotesque arc. Commentary teams gawked, referees called DQ, and Dana White himself threw in an extra $50,000 bit bonus. And that wasn't the first time someone tried a primeval tactic. In a Pride-era clash,
the reason I came out on top because one, conditioning, and the team I work with. We work hard, not just for fights, we work hard every day in the gym. You know, Cain Vasquez, Kyle Kingsbury, me, John Fitch, Koscheck.
Mike Kyle locked in a guillotine on Wes Sims, and Sims, desperate to escape, literally munched on Kyle's shoulder until the choke broke. Despite leaving deep teeth marks, Sims kept the win. Fans argued online that biting didn't technically help the choke, but intentionally sinking your teeth into an opponent breaks one of the most fundamental rules of combat sports. Every bite serves as a reminder. No matter how desperate you get, crossing that line ensures you'll walk out of the cage empty-handed, and your highlight reel will be remembered for all the wrong reasons. Just when you think you've heard everything, along came a fight in Poland's bizarre 9x9 tiny-ass cage, where a 52-year-old father, stepping in for his son at the last minute, threw every rule book out the window. Predictably outmatched, he not only clung to the fence to avoid strikes, but at one point lunged and clamped onto his opponent's shoulder with his teeth, an open-jawed bite that made even seasoned officials recoil. This wasn't a split-second mistake. It was a sustained breakdown of every rule in MMA's history. Spectators counted dozens of cage grabs, illegal bites, and blatant fouls before the ref mercifully waved it off. It lasted far longer than any sane person would have expected, and it stands as a monument to cage fighting gone wild trademark. Next time you think, I've seen it all, remember this grizzled dad who turned a simple substitution into one of MMA's most unhinged disqualifications ever. You'd assume a fighter wearing shoes is safe from leg kicks, but in early 2000s UFC, donning grappling shoes opened a whole can of worms. For a brief period under old SEG rules, wrestlers could wear their shoes, but they absolutely could not kick while wearing them. Enter Alex Andrade, a Texas striker with perfect English and zero excuse. After flooring his opponent with punches, Andrade followed up with a soccer kick to the back of the head while still wearing shoes. The ref paused, warned him, let the fight resume. Then he did it again to the body, drawing another warning. And yet, Andrade ignored both cautions and threw a third illegal head kick, prompting an instant DQ, even though he was dominating. It was UFC's first DQ under Zuffa and a brutal lesson. Read the footnotes in the rulebook. Shoes might give you traction, but they can cost you a victory faster than any flying knee. Grabbing the cage for leverage isn't just bad sportsmanship, it's an automatic foul. Wes Sims did it against Frank Mir, hanging on to avoid Mir's ground and pound, and the result was a DQ reversal of what looked like a routine win. More recently in Risen, Kinoshita thought he'd claimed victory, music blaring, belt raised, until officials spotted fence grab leverage that amplified each knee to the head. Just like Sims, his win was overturned. In both cases, the fighters had already celebrated, trainers had leapt in, and fans cheered, only to see the result struck from the record. When you cling to the fence, even for a split second, you risk turning triumph into embarrassment, reminding everyone that in MMA, respect for the cage is just as important as respect for your opponent. In an attempt to quiet politicians worried about athlete safety, Pride FC instituted a bizarre rule. You could not soccer kick an opponent if they were on all fours. It made zero intuitive sense. After all, knees and punches were still legal. Yet for a handful of events, fighters had to unlearn instinct.
No, I don't think so. Because the government is very anti-martial arts. Kickboxing tournaments, they try to get it forbidden in Amsterdam now. It's allowed to get a coffee shop and to buy some hash.
Bob Schreiber, Gerard Gordeau, and Gilbert Evil fell victim to this awkward era. Schreiber landed a crushing kick as his foe tried to stand on all fours. Evil not only delivered an illegal soccer kick but also grabbed the ropes for extra thrust. Warnings flew, fouls piled up, and finally disqualifications overturned what had seemed like routine ground attacks. That rule vanished as quickly as it appeared, but its legacy lingers in highlight reels of fighters sweating the smallest detail. If you see an ankle-deep crouch, don't kick, even if your training screams, go for the head. Sometimes the foul isn't a punch or kick, it's something so subtle officials debate it for weeks. In Pancrasy back in 1994, Takaku Fukuda accused Gerard Stelling of hair-pulling mid-palm strike. A clean KO became a DQ loss when ref interpreted the alleged grab as intentional. Then there's the phantom foul robbery. A fighter lands a picture-perfect knockout, only for the ref to rule an illegal strike whose existence no one else saw. Cameras, corners, fans, everyone swears it was clean, yet the official's whistle ends the contest. Whether due to poor sightlines or an overzealous ref, these bouts remind us how quickly victory can vanish on a referee's call. One tried a middle ground. Ground and pound was allowed, but ground kicks required explicit ref permission. In Arlovsky versus Sylvia 4, Sylvia went down. Arlovsky pounced with legal kicks, then kicked again right after the ref said stop. Instead of a DQ, they ruled it a no contest, thanks to the rule's own confusion. The backlash was immediate. Officials scrapped permission-based kicks, then banned them entirely, only to reintroduce them years later with clearer guidelines. Fighters and referees alike learned the hard way that half-baked rules create half-baked fights, and sometimes no contests are the only way to save face. From Diego Sanchez's unintentional knee to Michel Pereira, where an accidental strike cost the challenger his belt, to Aljamain Sterling's title defense knee against Petr Yan, fouls decide championships. In each case, arguments raged over intent. Was it deliberate? Did he know the rule? Should a no contest stand? Then there are elbows.
I kicked his I don't consider it a loss. At the time that I fought Matt Hamill, I was very new to the sport. I joined the UFC after 9 months of training MMA. So there were so many things that I just didn't know. I never had anyone sit me down and explain the rule set to me, in detail.
John Jones's 12-6 downward elbow on Matt Hamill became MMA's most controversial DQ. Despite dislocating Hamill's arm and dominating the fight, 3 vertical elbows ended his perfect record. And Eliseo Sakura's 9 shots to Patrick Cote's spine might have seemed like a TKO until review showed repeated back-of-head strikes, reversing what had been scored as a stoppage. These fouls live on as cautionary tales. Even world-class athletes can't let their hands wander below the eyebrows, or their limbs arc from noon to 6 o'clock. Finally, the catch-all category of fouls you never see coming. Eric Prindle versus Thiago Santos capped a wild trilogy when Santos launched an axe kick directly into Prindle's groin, forcing a no contest.
The day the contract arrived, my son arrived. Then the day I went to the Coombe, I was only told the day before I was having a kid that the UFC weren't going to sign me, that they were thinking about putting me on Contenders in July. So I went to get a job and I was freaking out. I went to the Coombe, I found out I was having another baby.
Dean Barry's UFC debut imploded after a spinning heel to the dick and follow-up eye poke. He hasn't fought since. Gabby Garcia's eye poke versus Oksana Gagala looked accidental, but officials weren't convinced, flipping a near win into a DQ. Then there are finish line feuds. Fighters front flip on downed foes, swing double axe handles at unconscious bodies, or even charge toward referees in anger. Each stunt guarantees a DQ and sometimes a lifetime ban. Rope abuse, hanging on the fence to avoid takedowns, rounds out the list, turning what should be a combat sport into high-stakes gymnastics. From primal bites to baffling rule-set quirks, MMA's disqualifications show that chaos lurks behind every unified rule. These aren't mere footnotes. They're the moments when split-second decisions and arcane regulations collide, producing unforgettable and sometimes tragic highlights. Whether it's a bite that breaks skin, a knee that tears an arm, or a kick launched at the wrong time, every DQ shapes a fighter's legacy and the sport's evolution. So next time you hear, "He's been disqualified," don't just shrug it off. Think back to Lima's viral bite, Andrade's outlawed shoes, Jones's vertical elbows, or that dad in the tiny Polish cage. Each tells a story of how thin and treacherous the line can be between triumph and disgrace, and why every rule, no matter how obscure, matters more than you could ever imagine.